This video contains audio content only. There are no visual elements or images accompanying the audio. If you're expecting to see video footage, please note that this is an intentional audio-only presentation. We recommend listening to this content rather than watching the screen. Thank you for your understanding and enjoy the audio. Welcome. Join us as we explore the fascinating Ubaid period of ancient Mesopotamia, 6500–4000 BC, in simple terms. We'll uncover the rise of the first cities, from early settlements to complex urban centers, and witness the development of unique cultural practices, innovative technologies, and far-reaching trade networks. Discover how the Ubaid people adapted to a changing environment, built monumental temples, and established social structures that laid the foundation for Mesopotamian civilization. Get ready to journey back in time and witness the dawn of a new era. Chapter 1. Eridu. Dawn in the Marshes, the first city's Ubaid heartbeat. Our journey begins not in a bustling metropolis, but in a landscape vastly different from the Mesopotamia we often imagine. Picture southern Mesopotamia not as the arid land it is today, but a realm of marshes, rivers, and burgeoning floodplains, a world slowly emerging from the last ice age. Around 10,000 BC, a temperate climate began to reshape the region. Marshy areas transformed, first into floodplains, and then into the riverbanks lined with trees that would become the hallmark of later Mesopotamia. While the area south of Baghdad may have been habitable as early as the 11th millennium BC, evidence suggests that the land south of Uruk, the future great city, could have supported human life by the 8th millennium BC, far earlier than previously thought. It is in this environment, around 6500 BC, that we find the first whispers of Eridu, a settlement destined to become a cornerstone of the Ubaid period and a precursor to the urban revolution. Eridu's story is intimately tied to the ebb and flow of the Persian Gulf. The coastline during the Ubaid period was a dynamic entity, constantly reshaping itself due to fluctuating sea levels. Around 6500 BC, the shoreline near present-day Kuwait likely extended further south than its current position. Over the next 2.5 millennia, this coastline gradually migrated northward, eventually reaching the vicinity of Ur by 4000 BC. This changing seascape would have profoundly impacted Eridu's access to resources, trade routes, and its very connection to the wider world. Imagine a community adapting to the shifting waters, navigating new channels, and exploiting the changing bounty of the Gulf. The earliest evidence of Eridu paints a picture of a wetland environment. Archaeobotanical research at Tel El Wali, the oldest known site in southern Mesopotamia and contemporary with Eridu's earliest phase, Ubaid I, has unearthed remnants of Euphrates poplar and sea club rush, plants that thrive in marshy conditions. This suggests that Eridu's first inhabitants lived in a world of reeds and water, a landscape that provided both sustenance and challenges. Date palms, present in the region since at least the 11th millennium BC, would have been a vital food source, their need for a perennial water supply further supporting the image of a wetter climate. Oak trees, too, graced the landscape during the 8th millennium BC, but their disappearance around the time of the Ubaid expansion in the 6th millennium BC hints at the growing demand for high-quality timber, a resource that may have fueled this outward spread. Eridu wasn't just a collection of houses, it was a planned settlement, exhibiting a sense of order that distinguishes it from earlier, more haphazard villages. The architecture of Eridu reveals a community working with the materials at hand. Mud bricks, made from the abundant clay of the region, became the primary building material. Houses were rectangular, often arranged around courtyards, creating a sense of privacy and community. The layout of these dwellings suggests a deliberate organization, with streets and alleys separating the houses, hinting at a level of urban planning that was remarkably advanced for its time. Imagine walking through the narrow streets of Eridu, the walls of mud brick houses rising on either side, the sounds of daily life echoing through the courtyards. At the heart of Eridu lay the temple, a structure that would become the city's defining feature and a testament to the growing importance of religious and social institutions. The temple sequence at Eridu is truly remarkable, spanning over 2 millennia and encompassing at least 17 rebuildings on the same spot. This repeated construction on sacred ground speaks volumes about the enduring significance of this location for the people of Eridu. It wasn't simply a matter of replacing a dilapidated structure, It was a ritual act, a reaffirmation of the community's connection to the divine and to their shared history. The temple's architecture evolved dramatically over time. It began as a modest, one-room structure, approximately 3.5 by 4.5 meters, roughly 11 by 15 feet. This simple shrine contained a recess at one end, housing a pedestal that may have served as an altar, and another pedestal in the main room, bearing traces of burning, perhaps from offerings. As Eridu grew, so did its temple. Subsequent rebuildings added subsidiary rooms, creating a more complex layout. Buttresses, architectural supports that strengthened walls, became increasingly prominent, adding both structural integrity and visual grandeur. Platforms were introduced, raising the temple above the surrounding buildings and emphasizing its importance. The final Ubaid temple at Eridu stood atop a substantial platform, measuring approximately 10 by 20 meters, with a grand stairway leading up to its entrance. What rituals unfolded within these sacred walls? While we lack written records from the Ubaid period, the architectural features offer clues. The altar suggests offerings were made, perhaps of food or other precious items. The presence of numerous fish bones in the fill between successive temples strongly suggests a connection to water and, perhaps, to a deity associated with this vital resource. Later texts identify Enki, the god of water, as the city god of Eridu, but projecting this association back into the Ubaid period remains a hypothesis, albeit a compelling one. Imagine the sights and sounds of rituals performed within the temple, the flickering of flames on the altar, the chanting of prayers, the scent of offerings filling the air. The spatial organization of Eridu reveals a social structure that was becoming increasingly complex. The houses surrounding the temple were not randomly arranged. They were organized in concentric zones, reflecting a hierarchy based on proximity to the sacred center. Elite residences, larger and more elaborate than the average dwelling, occupied the innermost zone, closest to the temple. Further out lay the craft workshops, where specialized artisans plied their trades, creating the tools, pottery, and other goods that sustained the community. The outermost zone belonged to the farmers, the backbone of Eridu's economy, their homes simpler and smaller, reflecting their position in the social hierarchy. This spatial organization, with the temple at its core and social status radiating outwards, foreshadows the urban centers that would define later Mesopotamia. Eridu, in its Ubaid incarnation, stands as a powerful example of the transition from small villages to larger, more complex settlements. It showcases the innovations and practices that would become characteristic of the Ubaid period as a whole: planned settlements, sophisticated irrigation systems, monumental temple architecture, specialized labor, and the beginnings of social stratification. Eridu, dawn in the marshes, wasn't just the earliest known city in southern Mesopotamia. It was a microcosm of the Ubaid world, a crucible where the elements of urban life were forged, setting the stage for the rise of civilization in the land between the rivers. Chapter 2. The Potter's Wheel and the Serpent's Idol. Defining Ubaid identity. The Ubaid people, emerging from the marshlands of southern Mesopotamia, forged a distinct identity not only through their innovative urban planning but also through a rich and diverse material culture. Their pottery, in particular, stands as a testament to their skill and artistry, a defining characteristic of the Ubaid period and a key to understanding their cultural interactions and social evolution. Ubaid pottery, readily identifiable by its high-fired, buff-colored clay, often painted with dark geometric designs, provides a window into their technological advancements, aesthetic sensibilities, and daily lives. Initially, during the earlier phases of the Ubaid period, Ubaid 0 to 2, pottery decoration was elaborate and complex, featuring dense patterns of geometric shapes, lines, and sometimes even stylized representations of animals or humans. These early vessels, often handcrafted with meticulous care, demonstrate a mastery of pottery-making techniques and a deep appreciation for ornamentation. The repertoire of shapes included deep bowls and basins, likely used for food preparation and storage, as well as shallow bowls and globular jars, possibly serving as serving dishes or containers for liquids. A significant technological shift occurred during Ubaid 3 and 4 with the introduction of the slow potter's wheel. This innovation, while not as advanced as the fast wheel of later periods, allowed for greater speed and efficiency in pottery production, leading to a noticeable change in both the forms and decorations of Ubaid ceramics. While the slow wheel facilitated the creation of more standardized shapes, including more refined versions of the earlier bowls and jars, it also seems to have coincided with a simplification of decorative motifs. The intricate patterns of earlier phases gave way to simpler designs, often consisting of broad horizontal lines, bands, swags, and less densely packed geometric elements. This shift may reflect not only the practical considerations of faster production but also potential changes in social identity and ceremonial practices, perhaps a move towards a more communal or standardized expression of cultural values. One distinctive pottery type that emerged during this period is the Koba bowl, a plant-tempered vessel with a characteristic beveled rim, found in abundance at sites like Tel Zaydan. The prevalence of these bowls, alongside other locally distinct pottery forms, highlights the regional variations that existed within the broader Ubaid horizon, demonstrating that while certain stylistic and technological traits were shared, local communities maintained their own unique pottery traditions. Alongside pottery, the Ubaid period is also renowned for its distinctive clay figurines, often anthropomorphic but with striking reptilian features, earning them the moniker, Ubaid lizardmen. These enigmatic figures, found at sites like Tel al-Ubaid, and Eridu, exhibit a range of variations in appearance and posture, fueling speculation about their significance within Ubaid society. The figurines typically feature elongated heads, almond-shaped eyes, pointed noses, and sometimes even scaled or textured bodies, evoking a reptilian or serpentine appearance. Some figurines are depicted holding staffs or scepters, suggesting authority or leadership, while others, particularly female figures, are shown nursing babies, possibly symbolizing fertility or motherhood. The fact that the infants are also depicted with reptilian features further deepens the mystery surrounding these artifacts. The elongated heads of the figurines have led to various interpretations, one of which connects them to the practice of cranial modification, or head shaping, evidenced by skeletal remains from Ubaid sites like Djirmaintepe and Arpachia. This practice, involving the binding of infant skulls to achieve a desired shape, was likely a significant social marker, potentially signifying group affiliation, status, or even a connection to specific beliefs or rituals. Whether the figurines directly represent individuals with modified skulls or embody a broader symbolic meaning related to this practice remains a subject of ongoing debate. The lizardmen figurines, with their unique blend of human and reptilian attributes, are often interpreted within a broader symbolic context, possibly representing deities, ancestors, or other significant figures within Ubaid cosmology. Their connection to other symbolic artifacts, such as clay discs that may have been labrets or ear spools, and bent clay nails, further supports their ritual or ceremonial significance. Labrets and ear spools, often made from precious materials like lapis lazuli, turquoise, or carnelian, likely served as markers of social status or group identity, while bent clay nails, found in abundance at some sites, may have had a ritualistic use related to clay working or construction. These artifacts, taken together, suggest a complex system of beliefs and practices, where personal adornment, body modification, and symbolic objects played an important role in defining social roles and expressing cultural values. The Ubaid people were not isolated, they were active participants in a vast network of exchange, connecting them with distant regions and facilitating the flow of both raw materials and finished goods. The presence of materials like lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, turquoise from Sinai or Iran, carnelian from the Indus Valley, and obsidian from Anatolia at Ubaid sites speaks volumes about their far-reaching connections. These materials, often used for the creation of beads, pendants, and other ornaments, were not merely decorative, they held symbolic value, representing wealth, status, and perhaps even access to distant powers or resources. The obsidian, a volcanic glass prized for its sharpness, was used for making blades and other tools, demonstrating the practical as well as the symbolic importance of these traded goods. The shift in Ubaid pottery decoration, from elaborate to simpler designs, has sparked various interpretations. Some scholars suggest that this change reflects a shift in social identity and ceremonial practices, perhaps a move towards a more communal or standardized expression of cultural values. Others propose that the simpler decorations of later Ubaid pottery may be related to the increased efficiency of production brought about by the potter's wheel, prioritizing functionality over ornamentation. It's also possible that the change in decorative style reflects a shift in the meaning and use of pottery within Ubaid society, perhaps from primarily ritualistic or ceremonial objects to more everyday utilitarian wares. The material culture of the Ubaid period, encompassing pottery, figurines, personal ornaments, tools, and building materials, provides a rich and multifaceted portrait of a complex and dynamic society. Their technological innovations, artistic achievements, and extensive trade networks reveal a culture that was not only adapting to its environment but also actively shaping its world, forging a unique identity that would leave a lasting impact on the trajectory of Mesopotamian civilization. The Ubaid people, through their mastery of clay and their engagement with the wider world, laid the foundations for the urban revolution and the rise of the first cities, leaving behind a legacy of innovation and cultural exchange that continues to intrigue and inspire us today. Chapter 3. Whispers of Power: Social Stratification in the Ubaid World. Emerging from the rich tapestry of Ubaid material culture, a more intricate pattern begins to reveal itself: the subtle yet significant rise of social hierarchies. While the earliest Ubaid communities may have exhibited a degree of egalitarianism, the seeds of social stratification were sown during this formative period, sprouting into more defined hierarchies as the Ubaid world expanded and complexified. The whispers of power, initially faint, grew louder with time, foreshadowing the more pronounced social divisions of later Mesopotamian civilizations. One of the key indicators of burgeoning social complexity lies in the increasing specialization of labor. While earlier communities likely relied on a more generalized skill set, the Ubaid period witnessed the emergence of specialized artisans dedicated to specific crafts. Pottery production, a hallmark of Ubaid material culture, provides a compelling example. The shift from elaborate handcrafted pottery in the early phases to the mass-produced, simpler wares of later Ubaid periods suggests the development of specialized workshops and the organization of labor. The discovery of hundreds of grindstones and grinders concentrated in a single room at Yaram Tepe, for example, paints a vivid picture of specialized production, possibly geared towards trade and exchange. Similarly, the presence of distinct regional pottery styles, like the plant-tempered koba bowls found in abundance at Tel Zaydan, suggests localized production centers, each with its own unique traditions and expertise. Metallurgy, though still in its nascent stages during the Ubaid period, also offers glimpses into specialized craftsmanship. The presence of unalloyed copper objects, primarily pins, chisels, and small tools, found mainly in Upper Mesopotamia, indicates the emergence of specialized metalworkers. While metal objects remained relatively rare compared to flint and obsidian tools, their existence signifies the beginnings of a craft that would become increasingly important in later periods. The question of whether these specialized artisans held a higher social status than farmers or other laborers remains open to interpretation, but the concentration of administrative artifacts, such as seals and ceilings, in specific buildings at sites like Tel Abadah and Tepe Gora suggests a connection between craft specialization and the control of production and resources, possibly by elite families. The most compelling evidence for social stratification, however, comes from the burial practices of the Ubaid people. While the majority of Ubaid burials exhibit a degree of uniformity, with the deceased typically interred in simple pits or brick boxes accompanied by a modest assortment of grave goods, a small but significant percentage of graves stand out for their lavishness. These richer burials found at sites like Eridu, and Tepe Gora, contain a far greater number and variety of grave goods, including not only pottery vessels but also copper axes and mirrors, beads crafted from precious stones like lapis lazuli and carnelian, and personal ornaments made of shell or bone. The presence of such luxury items in a select few graves suggests a clear differentiation in social status during life, with certain individuals or families possessing greater access to wealth and prestige. Furthermore, the increasing elaboration of burial rituals, including the use of more complex grave structures and the inclusion of a wider range of grave goods, points to an emerging concept of an afterlife and the importance of preparing for it. The flood layer cemetery at with its burials interred within thick deposits of water-laid silt, provides a particularly poignant example. These individuals, buried in the aftermath of a devastating flood, were laid to rest with their belongings, suggesting a belief in a continued existence beyond death and the need to equip the deceased for their journey into the afterlife. The infant burials found beneath the floors of certain buildings, such as House A at Tel Abada and the White Room at Tepe Gora, offer another intriguing piece of the puzzle. These burials, distinct from the typical Ubaid burial practices, suggest a special status for the infants and their families. The fact that these burials are found within what appeared to be elite residences, distinguished by their size, elaborate architecture, and the presence of unusual artifacts like clay tokens, marble studs, and a greater concentration of administrative artifacts, further strengthens the link between these infants and the emerging elite class. Whether these infants were sacrificed, died of natural causes, or were buried in this manner for other ritualistic reasons remains a mystery, but their unique treatment underscores the social differentiation that was taking root within Ubaid society. The development of elite classes within the Ubaid world appears to be linked to a combination of factors, including control over resources, religious authority, and possibly kinship ties. The evidence from Tel Abada and Tepe Gora suggests that certain families occupied prominent positions within their communities, possibly acting as chieftains or leaders. House A at Tel Abada, for instance, stands out not only for its size and elaborate construction but also for the unusual artifacts found within, including clay tokens, possibly used for accounting or record-keeping, and a large number of infant burials beneath its floors. Similarly, the White Room at Tepe Gora, though initially interpreted as a temple, displays characteristics of an elite residence, with its administrative artifacts, metal tools, and infant and child burials. These elite residences, distinct from ordinary houses in their size, complexity, and the presence of specialized or administrative artifacts, reflect a concentration of power and resources in the hands of a select few. The theory of competitive households, where certain families accumulate wealth and prestige through successful economic strategies and social alliances, provides a compelling framework for understanding the emergence of Ubaid elites. These elites, possibly acting as chieftains, may have played a crucial role in mediating conflicts, maintaining social order, and organizing communal activities, including the construction and maintenance of public works like temples and irrigation systems. The shift in material culture from elaborate pottery in the early Ubaid phases to simpler designs and a greater emphasis on public architecture in later periods may reflect a deliberate strategy by emerging elites to consolidate power and foster community identity. By downplaying ostentatious displays of individual wealth and focusing on communal projects, these elites could reinforce their authority and legitimize their control over resources and labor. The construction of temples, while benefiting the entire community, also served as a visible symbol of elite power and a focal point for social and religious activities. The emergence of a two-tiered settlement hierarchy, with large sites like Eridu, and Uqair serving as regional centers surrounded by smaller, possibly subordinate villages, further reinforces this notion of centralized control and the concentration of power in the hands of elites associated with these larger settlements. The social organization of Ubaid communities underwent a significant transformation during this period. The emergence of elites and the development of more complex social hierarchies led to a shift away from the more egalitarian structures of earlier villages. Community decision-making, once likely based on consensus or the council of elders, may have become increasingly centralized, with elites wielding greater influence over communal affairs. This shift towards more centralized control, coupled with the growing importance of religious institutions and the development of specialized crafts, laid the groundwork for the more complex and hierarchical societies of later Mesopotamia. The emerging regional centers, with their concentration of power and resources, played a crucial role in the expansion of the Ubaid phenomenon, extending their influence through trade networks, cultural interactions, and possibly even the establishment of outposts or colonies in distant regions. The whispers of power, once subtle, were becoming increasingly amplified, setting the stage for the rise of the first cities and the dawn of a new era in human history. Chapter 4. Beyond the Horizon. Tracing the expansion of the Ubaid phenomenon. The story of the Ubaid period is not confined to the marshes and floodplains of southern Mesopotamia. It's a story of expansion, interaction, and transformation, a narrative woven across a vast landscape stretching from the foothills of the Taurus Mountains in the northwest, encompassing the Amuk Valley and sites like Mersin, to the Zagros Mountains in the east, reaching Tepe Gabristan, and extending south along the Arabian coast to the shores of the Persian Gulf, encompassing Dosaraya in modern-day Saudi Arabia. Within this expansive region, the Ubaid phenomenon, recognizable yet diverse, left its mark on the landscape and the lives of the people who inhabited it. It wasn't a monolithic culture, stamped uniformly across the land, but a dynamic interplay of shared traditions and local adaptations, a vibrant mosaic of cultural expressions reflecting the unique circumstances of each region. This expansion unfolded over centuries, marked by distinct phases that archaeologists have meticulously pieced together. Initially, during Ubaid I, circa 6500–5900 BC, the phenomenon was primarily concentrated in southern Mesopotamia, with sites like Tel el-Wali providing the earliest glimpse into this emerging culture. Ubaid I, circa 5900–5200 BC, often referred to as the Eridu phase, saw the consolidation of Ubaid traditions in the south, with Eridu itself emerging as a prominent center. As the Ubaid period progressed, its influence began to radiate outwards, carried along the currents of trade and migration. Ubaid II, circa 5200–5100 BC, associated with the Haji Muhammad style of pottery, witnessed the expansion of irrigation networks, marking a crucial step towards more intensive agriculture and the ability to support larger populations. This, in turn, fueled the growth of settlements and the development of more complex social structures. The earliest signs of Ubaid influence began to appear in northern Mesopotamia during this phase, although the relationship between the Ubaid and the pre-existing Hassuna and Halaf cultures was complex and varied across regions. Ubaid III, circa 5100–4900 BC, marked by the classic Tel el-Ubaid pottery style, saw the Ubaid phenomenon reach its peak, extending its reach into northern Mesopotamia, Syria, and along the Persian Gulf coast. This expansion was not a uniform process. It involved a complex interplay of trade, migration, and cultural exchange, resulting in the adoption and adaptation of Ubaid traits by diverse local communities. The evidence for trade is particularly compelling. The presence of Ubaid pottery in distant regions, sometimes alongside locally produced wares imitating Ubaid styles, speaks volumes about the importance of trade networks in disseminating cultural influences. At Dosaraya, on the Gulf coast of Saudi Arabia, archaeologists have found not only Ubaid pottery but also locally made imitations, demonstrating the value placed on these vessels and the desire of local communities to emulate Ubaid styles. This imitation wasn't simply a matter of copying, it was a form of cultural transmission, a way for local potters to incorporate Ubaid aesthetics into their own traditions, creating hybrid styles that reflected both the influence of the Ubaid and the unique cultural identity of the Gulf Coast communities. Dates, a staple food in southern Mesopotamia, were likely traded north, while semi-precious materials, such as lapis lazuli from Afghanistan and turquoise from Iran or Sinai, flowed south. Jewelry crafted from pearls and shell, abundant along the Gulf Coast, may have been exchanged for livestock, animal products, and other resources from inland regions. Obsidian, a volcanic glass prized for its sharpness, traveled long distances, with obsidian artifacts found at Gulf Coast sites like Dosaraya and Wadi Dabayan originating from sources in southeastern Turkey. These trade routes, often following the courses of rivers or the coastline, facilitated the movement not only of goods but also of people and ideas, fostering cultural connections and shaping the shared identity of the Ubaid world. Migration, too, played a significant role in the Ubaid expansion. The discovery of Ubaid settlements at coastal sites like H3 and Bara I in Kuwait, complete with characteristic Ubaid pottery and architecture, suggests the movement of Mesopotamian communities to the coast, possibly driven by population growth, the search for new resources, or the desire to establish trading outposts. These coastal settlements provide the earliest evidence for seafaring in the region, with boat remains at H3 showcasing vessels equipped with masts and sails. This development of seafaring technology opened up new avenues for trade and communication, connecting the Mesopotamian heartland with distant coastal communities and facilitating the spread of the Ubaid phenomenon along the shores of the Persian Gulf. Whether these migrations involved entire communities or smaller groups of traders and craftspeople remains a subject of debate, but the evidence suggests a significant movement of people and the establishment of new Ubaid communities beyond the traditional boundaries of Mesopotamia. The interaction between the Ubaid and pre-existing cultures in different regions was complex and varied. In northern Mesopotamia, the Halaf-Ubaid transitional (Hut) period, dating to circa 5500–5200 BC, provides a glimpse into this cultural interplay. Pottery assemblages from this period display a fascinating blend of Ubaid and Halaf characteristics, with some vessels exhibiting the dark geometric designs typical of Ubaid pottery while others retain the polychrome painted decoration characteristic of Halaf ceramics. Architectural styles also show signs of blending, with some buildings incorporating elements of both Ubaid and Halaf traditions. This suggests a gradual process of cultural exchange and integration, with local communities adopting and adapting Ubaid traits while retaining aspects of their own cultural identity. The degree of interaction between the Ubaid and local communities varied across regions. In the area of Kuwait, the interaction was particularly strong, suggesting close ties between Mesopotamian settlers and the indigenous Neolithic population. Further south, along the Arabian coast, the interaction appears to have been less pronounced, with Ubaid influence primarily manifested in the presence of traded pottery and a limited adoption of Ubaid styles by local communities. This variation in interaction may reflect differences in pre-existing cultural traditions, environmental conditions, or the nature of trade and exchange relationships. The Ubaid expansion was not always a peaceful process. While trade and cultural exchange were undoubtedly important factors, competition for resources, land, and trade routes may have led to conflicts between Ubaid communities and the indigenous populations of the regions they expanded into. The archaeological record, while not always conclusive, hints at instances of conflict and displacement, suggesting that the spread of the Ubaid phenomenon was not solely a story of peaceful interaction but also involved elements of competition and dominance. Ubaid IV, circa 4900–4350 BC, often referred to as the Late Ubaid, saw the continuation of these trends, with increasing social complexity and the development of larger, more hierarchical settlements. The characteristic tripartite house plan, initially developed in southern Mesopotamia, became widespread during this phase, although regional variations in its implementation emerged, reflecting local adaptations and preferences. The use of seals and sealings, administrative artifacts used to mark ownership and control the movement of goods, became more prevalent, suggesting a growing emphasis on administrative practices and the management of resources. Ubaid V, circa 4350–4200 BC, the terminal Ubaid, marks the transition to the subsequent Uruk period, a period of even greater urbanization and the emergence of the first true cities. During this phase, the distinctive Ubaid pottery style began to decline, replaced by new ceramic traditions characterized by unpainted, organic tempered wares. This shift in pottery styles, along with changes in architectural forms and other aspects of material culture, signals the end of the Ubaid period and the dawn of a new era in Mesopotamian history. The Ubaid phenomenon, spanning nearly 2 millennia and encompassing a vast region, was a complex and dynamic process. It involved a continuous interplay of trade, migration, cultural exchange, and competition, resulting in the formation of a widespread interaction sphere where shared traditions were adapted and transformed by local communities. The Ubaid people, through their innovations in agriculture, architecture, and social organization, laid the foundation for the urban revolution and the rise of civilization in Mesopotamia. Their legacy extends far beyond their own time, shaping the cultural and technological trajectory of the Near East and leaving an indelible mark on the history of humanity. Chapter 5. Legacy in Clay: How the Ubaid Shaped Mesopotamian Civilization. The Ubaids' contribution to urbanism was nothing short of revolutionary. Their settlements, no longer simply haphazard collections of dwellings, began to exhibit a level of planning and organization that foreshadowed the cities of the future. Tel Abadah, a complete Ubaid settlement excavated in the Hamran region, provides a compelling example. Here, archaeologists uncovered a village meticulously planned, with houses arranged in orderly rows, separated by streets and alleys, hinting at a conscious effort to create a structured and functional living space. Similarly, at Tel Madher, also in the Hamran region, a remarkably well-preserved house showcases the architectural ingenuity of the Ubaid people. This house, with its multiple rooms and carefully designed layout, suggests a level of domestic comfort and sophistication previously unseen. This innovative design, featuring a central hall flanked by two smaller rooms, provided a versatile and adaptable living space, suitable for both domestic and communal activities. T-shaped houses, another architectural innovation, offered a variation on this theme, providing a different spatial arrangement while still adhering to the principles of organized and functional design. These architectural forms, first developed during the Ubaid period, would become standard features of Mesopotamian architecture for centuries to come, influencing the design of houses, palaces, and even temples. The development of temples on raised platforms, a practice seen at sites like Eridu and Tepe Gora, further underscores the Ubaids' contribution to urban planning. These elevated temples, often the most prominent structures in a settlement, served as both religious and social centers, focal points for communal activities and expressions of shared beliefs. At Eridu, the temple sequence, with its repeated rebuildings on the same sacred spot, demonstrates the enduring significance of these structures. Each successive temple, larger and more elaborate than its predecessor, reflects the growing importance of religious institutions and the increasing complexity of Ubaid society. Tepe Gora, in northern Mesopotamia, also boasts a series of temples, showcasing the spread of Ubaid architectural traditions and their adaptation to different regional contexts. These temples, with their distinctive tripartite plans, raised platforms, and elaborate decorations, served as prototypes for the monumental temple complexes that would become characteristic of later Mesopotamian cities. The Ubaids' legacy in agriculture is equally significant. They were not merely farmers, they were innovators, developing sophisticated techniques that transformed the landscape and laid the foundation for a thriving agricultural economy. They cultivated a diverse range of crops, including barley, wheat, lentils, ervils, flax, and dates, ensuring a varied and nutritious diet. They also domesticated a variety of animals, including sheep, goats, cattle, and pigs, providing not only food but also wool, hides, and other valuable resources. The domestication of these animals also marked a shift towards a more settled lifestyle, allowing for greater control over food production and the development of specialized animal husbandry practices. The Ubaids' most significant contribution to agriculture, however, was their mastery of irrigation. Recognizing the challenges of farming in the arid Mesopotamian environment, they developed sophisticated irrigation systems that harnessed the power of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. At Choga Mami, for instance, archaeologists have uncovered extensive canal networks, carefully engineered to channel water to the fields, enabling the cultivation of vast tracts of land that would otherwise have been barren. These canals, not simply ditches dug in the ground, represent a significant feat of engineering, requiring careful planning, organization, and communal effort. Their construction and maintenance would have necessitated a level of social cooperation and centralized administration that further underscores the growing complexity of Ubaid society. The impact of these agricultural advancements was profound. Increased food production, fueled by irrigation and improved farming techniques, led to a surge in population growth. This, in turn, fueled the expansion of settlements, transforming small villages into larger towns and laying the groundwork for the emergence of cities. The surplus of food also allowed for the development of specialized labor. With basic needs met, individuals could dedicate themselves to crafts like pottery, weaving, and metallurgy, leading to a diversification of the economy and the emergence of distinct social classes. The Ubaids' cultural traditions, deeply rooted in their daily lives and beliefs, also left a lasting impact on Mesopotamia. The introduction of the slow potter's wheel during Ubaid 3 and 4 led to a shift towards mass-produced, unpainted ceramics, with simpler designs that prioritized functionality over elaborate decoration. This shift may reflect not only the practical considerations of faster production but also a change in the social significance of pottery, perhaps from primarily ritualistic objects to more everyday utilitarian wares. The Ubaids' use of clay extended beyond pottery. Clay sickles, though seemingly fragile, were a common tool, likely used for harvesting crops. Their prevalence suggests the importance of agriculture in Ubaid society and the ingenuity of the Ubaid people in utilizing readily available materials. Stamp seals, another distinctive Ubaid artifact, were used to mark ownership and control the movement of goods, providing evidence of administrative practices and the development of systems for tracking and managing resources. These seals, often carved with intricate designs, also served as symbols of personal or communal identity. The practice of head shaping, evidenced by skeletal remains and possibly reflected in the elongated heads of some Ubaid figurines, offers a glimpse into their unique cultural practices. This deliberate modification of the skull, achieved by binding infants' heads, likely held symbolic significance, possibly related to social status, group affiliation, or even religious beliefs. While the precise meaning of this practice remains a subject of debate, its prevalence in Ubaid communities suggests its importance as a social marker. The Ubaids' religious beliefs, though not fully understood, also played a significant role in shaping their culture and influencing later Mesopotamian traditions. The construction of temples, such as those at Eridu and Tepe Gora, provides compelling evidence for organized religious practices and the emergence of specialized religious roles. The repeated rebuildings of the temple at Eridu, each larger and more elaborate than the last, suggest the growing importance of religious institutions and the enduring significance of this sacred site. The presence of altars within these temples suggests the practice of making offerings, perhaps of food or other precious items, while the discovery of numerous fish bones at Eridu hints at a connection to water deities, possibly prefiguring the later association of Eridu with Enki, the god of water. Burial practices also offer insights into Ubaid religious beliefs. The inclusion of grave goods, such as pottery vessels, personal ornaments, and occasionally tools or weapons, suggests a belief in an afterlife and the desire to equip the deceased for their journey into the next world. The differentiation in burial practices, with adults typically buried in communal cemeteries while infants were often interred near dwellings, perhaps reflects different beliefs or rituals associated with different age groups. The flood layer cemetery at with its burials interred within thick flood deposits, provides a poignant example of Ubaid burial practices and their connection to the natural world. The Ubaids' cultural traditions, from their distinctive pottery and clay artifacts to their religious practices and burial rituals, were not static. They evolved over time, adapting to changing circumstances and influencing the cultures that followed. The Sumerians, who emerged as the dominant force in Mesopotamia after the Ubaid period, adopted and adapted many Ubaid traditions, incorporating them into their own cultural repertoire. The construction of temples on raised platforms, the use of stamp seals, and even the practice of head shaping all have roots in the Ubaid period, demonstrating the enduring legacy of this formative era. The Ubaids' cultural innovations, combined with their advancements in urbanism and agriculture, laid the foundation for the rise of Sumerian civilization and the subsequent flourishing of Mesopotamian culture. Their legacy in clay, a testament to their ingenuity and artistry, continues to resonate through the millennia, shaping our understanding of the origins of civilization and the enduring power of human creativity. The Ubaid period, circa 6500–4000 BC, in Mesopotamia witnessed the dawn of urbanism, sophisticated irrigation, and social stratification, laying the groundwork for later civilizations. From the marshes of Eridu to the expanding trade networks across the Near East, the Ubaid people's innovations in architecture, pottery, and agriculture represent a pivotal step towards complex societies. Their development of planned settlements, monumental temples, and specialized crafts foreshadowed the hallmarks of Mesopotamian civilization. These findings illuminate the processes of urbanization and social development in early human history, offering insights relevant to modern urban planning and social organization. Where will this journey into our past lead us next? Share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. Subscribe for more explorations of ancient history. Never stop learning.